Hello, I'm Anthony Moreno. This is KRWG Public Media Election 2023 coverage featuring the Las Cruces Public Schools District 1 board candidates. KRWG Public Media and the League of Women Voters of Southern New Mexico are pleased to present this forum. The rules for this forum are simple. Each candidate has up to 60 seconds to answer each question and should not mention their opponent in their answer. We want to welcome our candidates, Patrick Nolan and Joseph Sousa. My co-moderator for this forum is Eileen Van Wee with the League of Women Voters of Southern New Mexico. I'll begin the forum with the first question to Mr. Nolan. What are the skills and background experiences that equip you to be a school board member?
Thank you for that question, Anthony. So I'm currently the school board member. I was appointed to the seat in April. And I've learned a lot in my time in that position since then. And it's really learning the nuance of the the large scale operations that we really have to manage at Las Cruces Public Schools. And I've built some relationships in the schools. We've hired our superintendent and we've really enjoyed working with him as he implements a bold new vision for our public schools. And I'm bringing to it, I'm a father, right? My daughter is a sophomore here in Las Cruces Public Schools. And I know that we need to do better and I know that we need to make improvements. But I also want to really take a chance to celebrate the great things that are happening every day in Las Cruces Public Schools. And I'll bring a spirit of cooperation and open conversation and a willingness to solve issues as they come up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sousa.
Yes, wonderful question. Starting out when I graduated from high school, I actually went into the military. I was in the Air Force doing air traffic control. There you really learn how to listen to problems that come up, and you really think on your feet. You can't sit there and run things back or try to come up with it. So you really have to learn how to listen very effectively. I also worked here doing 911 dispatch. So again, that listening ear and learning how to de-escalate situations as they come up. But not only that, I'm also a father of my 10-year-old who is actually going to Fair Acres. It's going to be her final year out there, and then she's going to move on to middle school here in Las Cruces Public Schools. Also, my wife is a teacher. She actually teaches at Mayfield. She teaches English. Wonderful school there as well. That actually kind of gives me a bit of an insight as far as seeing a lot of how the interactions are between the teachers, the students, the parents, and just where we can kind of start moving to make Las Cruces schools better.
Okay, well, moving on to our next question.
Thank you, Anthony. The next question comes to you, Mr. Sousa. What do you feel are the strengths and weaknesses of our public schools?
Our public schools, strengths and weaknesses. Gosh, what a wonderful question. You always want to start with your best foot forward, and I think right now, a lot of our teachers are really our strength. The teachers just need to be put forward and empowered to teach how they know how to teach. A lot of them are kind of being not necessarily held back, but not able to meet the student where they need to meet the students at in order to help the students grow. And that's kind of an issue as far as the students aren't really being met where they need to be met at in order to learning how to read, how to write, math skills, history, all that stuff there is kind of, not really getting through to a lot of the students, and we need to get really back to the basics of teaching those things there to our students, and just our teachers know how to do it. They just need to get that done.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nolan?
Thank you for that question. I think our strength is our staff, right? It's our teachers, it's our principals, it's our central office staff, it's our custodians, it's those folks that really go in every day to make a difference in the lives of students. I think our model around community schools is us really leaning into that, community schools, wraparound services. That is a huge strength that we have in our district, and we've really led the way here in New Mexico around community schools. And I think we have our new superintendent is, I think, a really strong, bold, visionary thinker, and that is certainly a strength of our district, and I think he's going to do a lot of good work. Where we need to make some improvements are, we have some test scores, some reading scores that are not great, right? We need to improve on our attendance as well. We're at about the state average, so really improving our attendance and our reading scores, I think, will be critical. And so a lot of that happens in sort of what we're calling the first tier education, is really making sure we're making those inroads in the beginning of a student's career.
Okay, our next question. What approaches do you feel should be developed to raise the graduation rate? We'll begin with Mr. Nolan.
Well, I think we've taken a really big step with the graduate profile. The graduate profile was created through 2022 and released earlier this year. And this was really built from community input. Lots of meetings between teachers, parents, staff, central office staff, to really sort of hone in on what are the values we want from a graduate of Las Cruces Public Schools. And it's really impressive, right? It talks about, it's sort of a whole world way of thinking of what it means to be a graduate of Las Cruces Public Schools. And it really has some great benchmarks in there, and it really provides us some standards and some goals to work towards as a district, because I think we need that, right? We need to lean into those goals, and now that we've identified them, we need to put the resources where they need to be in order to up our graduation rate.
Mr. Sousa.
In order to up the graduation rate, in my opinion, we really need to focus on getting the students back in the classroom. I know when I went to the superintendent's meeting with the parents and staff that he mentioned a number, 31%. 31% of the students are habitually tardy or late or not even showing up. And that's where we need to really just start fostering from a young age, bringing these kids up to understand, how to succeed, especially in school. Learning how to, where to set their homework, Right now, school should be paramount for these students growing up, starting all the way from, first, second, third grade, all the way up until 12th grade when they get ready to graduate and move on to the world. If they're not in class, they're not learning. If they're not learning, they're not doing well in the tests. And if they're not doing well in the tests and they're not studying and they're not actually showing up, they're not graduating either. So it's trying to get those people back into the schools.
All right, that's our time.
The next question is, what steps do you think the district can take to strengthen school safety? Mr. Sousa, we'll start with you.
Strengthening school safety, that is definitely a great question, and they've taken some of the right steps so far as extending the SROs. And the SRO program is absolutely wonderful, and not only in the high schools, but also in the junior highs. There's a lot of things that are going on in those schools as far as stuff that shouldn't be there, drugs, weapons, all that stuff there. And the SROs are just creating an environment for the students to feel safety and to feel security. We also have other staff that's in those schools, the security guards that aren't law officers, but you know what, they do a wonderful job. And they just need to have those tools and those assets, maybe more sets of eyes, more people and stuff like that to create that sense of security and to help these students out. Because when they feel like they're secure and they're wanted in those classrooms and they feel safety, they'll actually thrive a lot more than what we've been seeing so far.
Thank you. Mr. Nolan?
I think there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle, right? I think SROs is certainly a piece of that. I think the other piece is behavioral health in our schools, right? Our students feeling safe and comfortable in our school environment, right? So do we have enough behavioral health professionals in our schools to address needs? We do know that coming out of the pandemic, mental health needs in teenagers and young people skyrocketed, right? So how are we putting those resources in the schools directly where they can be accessed by our students? How are we talking about equality and equity and all these, addressing bullying, right? There's so many ways that we can talk about school safety, and I think it's really about creating that larger inclusive environment that will ensure that every student feels safe and comfortable in those schools. And I think we can do that in Las Cruces Public Schools because we have to, right? That's the best, that is the one thing that we really should be doing.
All right, our next question. Can you please share your opinion on how transportation services in the district are performing? We will start with Mr. Nolan.
Yes, transportation. Our system is broken. As our busing transportation system is broken. We are relying on a subcontract company that is a subsidy of another subsidy. I don't think that they are invested in our community. They don't have the resources or the know-how to develop the consistent workforce that we need in our transportation. So there's a couple solutions, right? We can look at another subcontractor. So far, nobody else has ever bidded for that contract. We're stuck with the one company that we've been using. We can also bring them in-house. That is a very expensive proposition, but I think it could be the step that we need to take. So that way we have more leverage and we have more control over staffing and ratios and pay. And it also presents, for those transportation workers, a good opportunity to become district employees.
Mr. Sousa.
I feel that our transportation to and from schools is fairly lacking. Like I said, my daughter is a student at Fair Acres, and I get message on my phone after message on my phone. This bus is going to be late. This bus is going to be covering this person's route. And my daughter doesn't take the bus. You know, we're fortunate enough that we're able to have somebody there to pick her up at the tree, you know, where the classes all walk by, and it's great because then we get her running across the lawn to us, which is wonderful. But those families that rely on the bus and the transportation there, I think it's falling short. And I do agree that if we were able to bring it in-house, maybe not all at once to start with, but you bring sections of the district in at first, you can kind of slowly start to transition and create, you know, more of a sense of community for these drivers that they have, other than just, I drive for this company here, this is the bus that I drive, this is my route. Instead, these bus drivers can get more of a sense of continuity within their routes and with the students that they drive.
All right, that's our time.
The next question. As a board member, where would you look to make budget cuts if it was necessary? Mr. Sousa?
The budget cuts, so when I was at the board district meeting that they had, kind of introducing some of the stuff to the prospective, you know, people that were going to be trying to put in for these positions on the school board, they kind of gave us what they referred to as a 30,000 foot overview. Now, from what I understand, there's pools that are set up, you know, from the state for certain funds, whether it's, you know, for the teachers or for the buildings or for this part of, you know, what the schools are needing. It's something that you really have to get your hands in, your hands dirty, and actually take a look and see what it is. So as far as right now, I don't think it's necessarily about cutting the budget. I think it's more about getting the resources allocated to the right places.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nolan?
Yes, I think that we are in a financial place right now as a district where we have plans so that we hopefully do not have to make those decisions to cut employees, right? And I think is it a reallocation of resources? It's a pushing resources towards other initiatives, other programs. I don't think we're in a situation where we need to start thinking about cuts, certainly with the economic situation in New Mexico, record revenue. And I think we've done a good job of really planning ahead to avoid that really tough decision around making budget cuts. And I think it's hard to say where exactly one would cut because every single thing that we do is vital in our public schools, and not one thing is more important than the other. So I would say none of them because we want to plan accordingly.
Okay, our next question. What more can the school district do to support the learning of children in poverty? We'll begin with Mr. Nolan.
If we're not talking about Yazzie Martinez as a state, as a district, when talking about teaching students in poverty, I don't know what we're talking about, right? That is, this has mandated for us as a state that it has told us that we are not sufficiently funding the education of low income, special education, Black, Brown, and Indigenous students. So Yazzie Martinez is going to continue to reverberate through school districts for years to come. And it really calls for us to sufficiently fund those things and those communities and those people. So it's really about sufficiently funding them and putting the resources directly where they can have the most impact.
Mr. Sousa.
I agree. This is, you know, definitely a Yazzie Martinez conversation that we're having here. You know, like Mr. Nolan was saying, and I apologize, but he hit the nail on the head. You know, we need to make sure that we're instructing and we're using the funds that are allocated to that to where they are able to make the most impact on those students. We shouldn't be sitting here, you know, looking at students and being like, oh, well, they're under this or they're under this, or, you know, trying to divide up the students. No, we should be bringing the students together and we should be bringing them all up. Now understand that there are certain students that do require a little bit more time, some under the SPED umbrella, some that are, you know, low income, so it's kind of hard because they don't exactly have the household that can kind of help to bring them up in a learning situation, a learning environment, and that's where, you know, having these funds allocated properly is definitely able to help benefit the students.
Thank you.
The next question is, what actions do you think the board can take to improve reading proficiency? Mr. Sousa?
reading proficiency. My wife is an English teacher, and I'm just going to make one conversational piece about that. So she had a student a couple years ago who was not really able to read anything other than comic books. And she started meeting him on that level as far as the comics and getting him to, tell her in his own words what was going on with that story, and started evolving that into more of like a book report. And that's what I think we need to start doing at the younger ages, is not just kind of passing them along, but we actually need to engage the students where they're at. We need to inform them as far as how much the importance of reading benefits them their whole lives. Cracking open a book and using your imagination, or cracking open a book and learning. These are things that just are basic in any kind of an education. YouTube U can only teach you so much, but actually getting into a book and going to the library and reading, and it's what actually starts getting you your education.
All right, that is our time.
And I think just reaching the students where they're at.
Thank you.
Mr. Nolan?
If you are struggling with reading as a student, I think it's going to be really hard to pay attention and engage as a student, right? So it's a fundamental thing, right? And again, it's resources, right? Do we have interventionists that can go in and give that one-on-one attention that many students need to up their reading level, up their reading game? Provide sufficient material, so provide also culturally relevant material, right, that they can respond to and see themselves in, right? If we make really some significant gains in reading, I think that snowballs from there, right? We can start making those math gains, those science gains, and that's really that fundamental thing that we need to improve on is reading. So how do we make sure that we are putting the resources into each and every student that needs those special attentions?
Our next question, what can the school district do to help improve math literacy? Mr. Nolan.
Again, math, I think one of those fundamental things, much like reading. It's really about resources, right? Are we training our math teachers, right? I know recruiting math teachers is really difficult. So what are we doing at our high school or our college education departments to push more teachers into math? Is it incentives in pay? Is it an increase in salary? We really need to start thinking creatively about how we attract more folks into that profession for math instruction. And then again, identifying and making sure that when students are struggling in those key subjects, that we are putting resources in front of them to help move them along.
Mr. Sousa.
For math literacy, it boils down again to engaging the students and engaging them where they're at. Some kids don't have the just jump on it and I've got it for math. Other kids, it takes them a little bit more time. And actually having the resources available to set those kids up with maybe a little extra tutoring on the side or something like that. I know some students get instruction at home from their parents as well, and just how they're learning in the school is different than what we remember growing up with. You don't just sit there and make the math column and you solve the column. And I think having a way for the students to actually learn, for the parents to actually kind of learn and understand how they're supposed to be doing the math will also help for if they're getting help at home from their parents.
The next question is, how do you think the district can help strengthen accessibility in schools? Mr. Sousa.
As far as accessibility for disabled persons, we do have the ADA that we kind of gain guidance from as far as whenever we're making schools or making hallways certain width or doorways and ramps and stuff like that. As far as accessible for students getting to school, that's another accessibility. You've got the buses, or some kids just elect to ride a bike. As far as accessible for the students, really that goes back to, I think, the Yazzie Martinez, as far as just those underprivileged kids that are, in those little subgroups that feel that they're not getting the accessibility that they deserve, and we need to make sure that we're getting the funds in the right channels for those.
Nolan.
I think this goes back to safety, right? Are our students feeling like they can access their school spaces in a safe and responsible way, right? It's physical and infrastructure improvements. It's also SPED, our special education department, has really had a hard time maintaining teachers, right? It's a tough place to work. So how do we make sure that we're putting qualified and sufficient resources into our teachers to make sure that folks are staying to do that really critical work, right? It's the work that happens now in our young kids, right, that we need to, for them to grow into adults that are contributing and being mindful of the world at large, right? So really making sure that those resources are being put into those students at an early age and making them feel safe and comfortable in their learning environment.
Thank you.
All right, our next question, what steps can be taken to improve behavioral health resources in schools? Mr. Nolan.
Behavioral health. We are seeing an acute mental health crisis within our youth. And so I think it's about making sure that we have social workers, counselors, psychologists in our schools to really directly talk to our students. If you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, it's going to be really hard to learn that math and that reading. So if we can sort of address those behavioral and mental health needs in our schools, I think we can go a long way into making some gains as a district. And I circle back also to that community school model, right, which partners with outside agencies to bring in behavioral health specialists to help supplement what the school maybe doesn't have the resources or the time to do. So you bring in those outside folks like FYI or other healthcare providers here in the community to really sort of supplement what is happening in our schools already.
Mr. Sousa.
I feel that we not only need to have those accessible during school hours, but also sometimes out of school hours, because, you know, if you're not feeling it at one time of the day, you might be feeling it a little later on in the day, and you can call and, you know what I'm saying, get an appointment set up through some of these outside agencies that really help to, you know, reinforce what the counselors and the, you know, staff at the school are trying to enforce as far as, you know, safety and as far as just the mental health crisis that we have going on right now. A lot of it started, in my personal opinion, back in 2020 when we took the kids out of the classroom, and it's just been, you know, it appears to me that it's been kind of snowballing since that situation, since we took them out of the classroom and put them in front of a screen, and now we're taking them out of the screen and putting them back in the classroom. It's kind of turning them for a bit of a loop.
All right, our next question.
How do you think the Board of Education can best communicate with its constituent groups?
The best way that the school board can, you know, converse with their constituents is, you know, obviously we have the school board meetings, and there's other events that we can possibly do throughout the school year. You know, maybe just have a night where the school board is available and it's more of a relaxed atmosphere, because a lot of people don't like to go in front of, you know, a board. They sit there and, you know, where it looks like they're looking down on you, and, you know, we need to kind of be more on an equal footing for some of these parents in order to be able to have them feel welcome to come up and talk to us. Emails are another good way, but of course a lot of times people feel that their emails just kind of go to the wayside. I think having the availability of once a month or so, you know, having some kind of an outside of the district building meeting where we can invite people from all of the district just to come and get a chance to talk to us.
Okay, Mr. Nolan?
Thank you for that question. I think board meetings are a great way to sort of get that conversation going. There's a lot of ears, there's a lot of folks paying attention. So those are really great avenues to get things addressed. Other than that, I think as school board members, we have a responsibility to engage with our community in whatever way that community sees fit, right? So as a school board member, I've attended walk to schools, I've attended PTO meetings, sporting events. It's really about getting out there and being accessible, making sure that they have your cell phone and your email and all of those things that they need to contact you with, and hosting those community meetings when appropriate, attending those school events. I think that's really the best way that we can sort of streamline that communication between our community, our school board, and our schools.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to our final question. What is your position on students accessing culturally diverse instructional materials? Mr. Nolan.
Again, circling back to Yazzie Martinez, we have the lawsuit said the state of New Mexico was failing in this regard, right? And we need to do better. So that's about sufficiently putting resources that our students see themselves in, right? And that they can relate to. So I think that has to be a critical need. that is met, and it will be, right, because we have to through Yazzie Martinez, but we just have to because it's the right thing to do. So having material that folks can relate to, I think, is critical. That's how we learn, right? We don't learn by something that we're not interested in or that bores us, right? We want to read from something that's interesting to us and we can relate to. So I think that's really important.
Mr. Sousa?
So having a lot of culturally diverse material, not only in the library, but things that you're able to learn in class and write on, is great, because then not only can you see yourself in the book or in the story or looking back in history and learning about your culture, your heritage, where you're from, the land that you come from. It actually helps to kind of set you up, you know what I'm saying? Because now you know where you've been, now where are you going to try and go to? So when you have that diversity, you can actually learn about, somebody else's heritage or somebody else's plights or what they're trying to do. So getting culturally diverse is very good, because then you can learn about other people's needs as a society as well.
Okay, that completes the KRWG Public Media District 1 Candidate Forum. We want to thank our candidates, Patrick Nolan and Joseph Sousa. We also want to thank our co-host, Eileen Van Wee with the League of Women Voters of Southern New Mexico. I'm Anthony Moreno. Thank you again for joining us. And remember, Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th.